Hi, welcome to Unit 5, Day 12, Chemical Reactions Final Assessment. This is the instructional video. So yesterday we did a review of Unit 5, Types of Chemical Reactions, and the things that we cover are the basics. We covered the basics of chemical reactions and the types of chemical reactions, and also what we need to know for each type. For example, do we need to know how to predict the products? And you need to know how to do that for combustion and double displacement, precipitate reactions. And are there special strategies for balancing them? And there are special strategies for combustion and double displacement. Today what we're going to do is a Unit 5 assessment lab. And this is open notes, so you're welcome to use your notes throughout the unit. At the end, you're going to complete this lab and submit it. Now for honors chemistry, there are 5 reactions. You are to complete all 5. For fundamentals of chemistry, you can complete any 3 that you choose. All right, so let's get started. So this is what your lab document looks like. And as you read at the top, there are the instructions. So if you want, you can pause the video and read the instructions now. The key thing about the instructions, there are sort of 3 main parts that you're going to do this in. The first part is filling up the first 3 columns in the table below. So in the first column, there's a video link. Now the video link will show you a demonstration of the reaction. And if we were in school, this would be something that you would be doing in the lab. You would do a reaction like this in the lab. The second column is the type of reaction. So you have to choose what type of reaction it is. Let me go ahead and unhighlight that. And so you would have to choose if it's synthesis, decomposition, combustion, etc. The third column is balancing the chemical reaction equations. So these first 3 columns are the ones you need to fill in, and you can do them in any order that you would like. The second part is to choose a piece of evidence that a chemical reaction has occurred. So remember, we can observe if a chemical reaction has occurred if there is light that's being released, a temperature change, like there was heat released or it got cold, a gas produced, etc. And so you'll choose at least one. Now you can choose more than one if you want to, but you could choose at just one if you prefer. So something that you observed from watching the video that a chemical reaction has occurred. And then finally, there's a follow-up question. All right. So there's a total of 5 of these at the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the first one's the example, and we're going to use the example to sort of get a sense of what we need to do. Okay, so let's get started. So in this example, reaction, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the video link. Remember, you don't need to start with that. You can start with the type of reaction, which you can get from the balanced chemical equation or from the chemical equation, or you can balance the chemical equation first. But I'm just going to start right here. And before I get started, notice how in red it has instructions. In this case, I'm watching the video from 0 to the first 28 seconds. So if there are no instructions there, you watch the whole video. All right, so to access the video link, you'll click on the hyperlink that's there. And so here we go, it'll take you to a YouTube video. I'm watching the first 28 seconds, right? And I see that I'm starting off with cobalt 2 chloride, so that's one of my reactants. It's this pinkish, reddish colored solution. And then it says aqueous sodium hydroxide, NaOH, is being added, so that's my second reactant. And I notice as it's being added, there's this dark bluish colored cloudy thing, which would be a precipitate. So I'm observing a precipitate here and a color change. All right, I just need to watch the first 28 seconds and I can go back to my document. Okay, so now that I finished watching the video, the next thing I'm going to choose to do is do the type of reaction. So I noticed that there was a precipitate that formed, so that tells me it's going to be a double displacement precipitate reaction. And for that, all I need to do is just highlight the one that I think it is. So you can highlight in any color you choose. I'll choose yellow. Now, if I wanted to, I could also figure out it's a double displacement reaction by looking at the chemical equations. And sometimes you'll have to look at the equation. The video won't be helpful for that. So I noticed in the chemical equation there, I have an ionic compound and I have another ionic compound. So 2 ionic compounds as my reactants. And I form 2 new ionic compounds as my product by switching partners. So I know this is double displacement. Okay, so that first 2 parts are done for me. The next thing I'm going to do is balance the chemical reaction equation. And so for balancing that, this is something you would want to do on a separate piece of paper. And remember, when you're balancing, you're trying to figure out the coefficients that need to go in. So let's go ahead and do that over here. So this will be like doing it on a separate sheet of paper. All right, so for this reaction, to balance it, since it's a double displacement reaction, remember when we're balancing, instead of listing each element, I'm going to list the cations and anions. All right, and here they are. And then I'm going to change the coefficients until they're balanced. So the cobalts are good, my COs, cobalts are good, but the chlorines are not good, Cls are not. So I'm going to change the coefficient in front of NaCl to get them to be the same number of chlorines. That changes the chlorine and the sodium as well. Now everything is good except for my sodium and my hydroxide. So I'm going to change the coefficient in front of NaOH, and that changes that. And now everything is balanced. Okay. So once I have the coefficients determined on a separate sheet of paper, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my document and type that in. Now, one thing that's important, if your coefficients are 1, so if we go back here, these are invisible 1s here, make sure you type in a 1, don't leave it blank. That way I know that you didn't leave it blank by accident. So when you type it in, it will look something like this. Okay, so that's the next part that we'll do, is to type it into our equation. So let's go ahead and type in a 1, I had a coefficient of 2, and this one was a 1, and then here we have a 2. Okay, so that part's good. In this problem, I also have some blanks for the phases. Now, not all of them have that. So in the example and also in reaction 3, you have to fill in the phases, and I can tell that those are the phases because they're in parentheses next to the molecules, right? So I'm going to go ahead and go back now and show how we figure out the phases. All right, so to figure out the phases, what we're going to do is we're going to use the solubility chart. And my first product that I formed in the example was cobalt hydroxide. So I have to find my cobalt and my hydroxide, and I see that there's an S there, so I can go ahead and type in an S. My next product is sodium chloride, NaCl. So type in find the sodium and the chloride, and I see that that's aqueous, and then I can type that in. Okay. So then once that's done, I'm going to go back to my document. So my cobalt hydroxide is a solid, so I type that in S, and then my sodium chloride is soluble aqueous, so I type in AQ. Okay. So the first 3 columns are now done. The next thing I'm going to do is evidence for a chemical reaction. So going back to the video, remember that the evidence that we had here was a precipitate form and also a color change. It went from this reddish color. One solution was like this reddish pink color, and then the other solution was colorless, and it formed this darker bluer color. So there's 2 pieces of evidence I can choose. I only have to highlight one, so I can either highlight precipitate formed, or I can highlight a color change, or you can choose to highlight both, your choice. So if there's more than one piece of evidence, you can highlight more than one, but you have to highlight at least one. All right, the last thing I'm going to do is answer the follow-up question. So the follow-up question in this example, which product is the precipitate and how do you know? All right, and so we kind of already did the work for that. When I filled in the phases for this example problem, I noticed that cobalt hydroxide was a solid, so that means it's my precipitate. So I would type in cobalt. Oops. Is my precipitate because it is a solid. Or you can say it's insoluble. Now, by the way, if you want to get the subscript, make that 2 into a subscript, you would highlight the 2, hold down Control and comma, and it'll make it into a subscript. Okay, final thing. Now that we've done all of that, I just want to go over some expectations with you. So just some couple of reminders about what it is that you need to do here. So remember, honors chemistry, you have to complete all 5 reactions, and fundamentals, you can choose any 3 reactions to do. And when I say complete, you have to watch the video, identify the type of reaction, basically fill out all the columns for this. And you can follow the example as a guide. And I'm also linking here some resources that may be helpful for you if you need them: the common ionic charges, polyatomic ions, and then the solubility chart. All right, that is it for this instructional video. I hope you found it helpful. Have a quality day.